Okay, so in this video I'm going to look at how you focus cut honeycombs so that you can have an identifiable motif in each of your honeycombs. So the tools that I've got are my acrylic template for the honeycomb shape. I've got the paper pieces, fabric scissors, fabric, smaller thread snippers, Clover wonder clips and needles. So I'm going to move some of these bits out of the way so they don't distract. Sorry for that noise. So I'm going to start off by getting these paper pieces out. So I've gone for quite a small size. Again, it comes down to personal preference and what you prefer to use. So these honeycomb shapes, the ones that I've gone for are 3/4 of an inch on each edge. And you can see here that this angle here is the right angle. And when all four are sewn together, they look like this, and you can either have it like that or you can have it like that, and you can add triangles in here if you wanted to create it into another shape, or you can add squares when you join it with other blocks, or you can do something else entirely. So let's look at doing identifiable motifs. So the idea with this is that you want the original motif on the fabric to be identifiable within your finished block. So I've got these super cute cats. Basically anything with cats on is like a winner for me. So I'm going to turn the fabric, and I can see here this is the sort of shape that I want. And again, think about orientation. So you could place it so it's central within your honeycomb that way, or if you are going to have your block that way in your quilt, you might want to think about doing it like this, and then when you come to the other side you can then turn it and do it that way. So you would use this bottom edge as like the line for where you want it to be, or you could go like this, which is quite a nice way when the motif's larger, or if you were doing like sausage dogs and they're longer that way, then that sort of fits in. I'm going to start off by showing you this way. So I'm going to line up the template. I'm going to use these lines on the acrylic template as a rough guide for sort of how I want it to sit within the finished block. So you can sort of see that this edge is where my paper piece would go, and then this is my seam allowance. So you don't have to worry about adding on a seam allowance when you're cutting it out because it's already done for you. So I'm going to hold the acrylic template onto place, use my fabric scissors, and then I'm just cutting around the template. So sort of like when you use a rotary cutter and a hard reader that way, but just doing this by hand. So I'll move this fabric out of the way, and you can see then that that is now cut. So you're then going to turn it over from the back, and you can just about see the motif on here, and if you wanted to, you could then, I sort of think that's where I want the centre point of the template to be, and then slide it up, and then I'd clip it into place just to make sure it's right. Or if you want it to be slightly more precise, and either way is fine, it's about finding what works for you. So I'm going to lay the acrylic template again on the back of the fabric just so I can sort of see the cat in there. I then let that flop down from the back enough that I can then slide the paper piece in and line it up with those dotted lines on the template. So that means that where the cat was is going to be dead on. You can see I haven't let the paper template go against the acrylic completely because I want to hold on to that and use my thumb and finger to hold the paper template there and remove that. Now before I baste it, I want to double check that the position is right. So I'm using a clip to fold this over and to clip it into place. And this just saves the hassle of if you baste it and then realise it's not in quite the right place and you wanted to redo it. This sort of allows you to see it before you get to that stage. And then you can turn it over, think, oh, is this okay? If you wanted to fold that down, yeah, and I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and baste that. So I've got a needle and I've tied 2 knots at the end. I like to thread baste personally. If you want to glue baste, that's absolutely fine. Again, it's personal preference and finding what works for you. So I'm going to start on this right angle edge. I'm going to push the fabric over, and I'm then going to use my thumb and just sort of really push that in so it's nice and crisp. I then put my thumb nail right into that edge of the template so I can fold that fabric over, and it gives you that really nice, see that really nice crisp point? Let's see if I can lock the camera onto that really nice crisp point there. So now I'm going to start basting. So I come in from the back of my paper template, and I'm going to go through right at that center point where I want it to hold. I'm taking the needle all the way through, so it's going through the fold, through the paper template, and out the other side to the front. I'm then taking a stitch slightly back, which might be, just trying to think how big this is now, maybe less than 1/4 of an inch. And I do quite small basting stitches, just because then I personally find it doesn't detract from the front. So you can sort of see, if I can knock that in again, so you can sort of see that's a really small stitch, but it's holding this fold into place. So I'm then going to carry on working my way around. Now I'm working anti-clockwise, but you can use, if you prefer to work clockwise, and that's okay. It really is about finding what works for you. So as I get to the next bit, I'll take that clip off, just tease that out, and I'm going to do the same as before. So I'm using my thumb to really make sure that the fabric is being pulled really flush against that paper template. Use my nail and bend that over, so it's created that fold there. I then take the needle down all the way through to the front again, pull it through, and then I'm going back 1/4 of an inch. And you can see by coming down on that fold, move my thumb out of the way and knock that in, by coming down on the fold and then coming back, that's holding that fold into place. And then when you move it across and do that thumb and the nail and bend it over, sorry, the camera decides it keeps wanting to change the focus. So that fold is held into place by going down there, by coming back, going back across again, that next fold is going to be held into place. So that's why I go forwards and then go back a little bit each time. So I'm just going to keep flicking between the two just so I can double check as I'm going that the position's okay, that I'm happy with how it's looking. Use your thumb now, dig it in. And then keep going back. And then when it comes to using the needle, what sort of needle to use, I really think it's down to personal preference. I quite like longer needles, so milliner's needles, but I'll go for kind of a thicker size just because I want it to be able to push through without bending the needle. And then this final one, because obviously you've got this fold here, you sort of use your nail to really make sure you're pushing that into that corner there, and then that sits nice and flush. And then take that final stitch, come back up, and then I just tie a knot on the back. So I create a loop, pass the needle through, and then pull it. I put my finger on to hold the knot into place. So, and then I do a second one on top. So create the loop, pass the needle through, and then pull that into place. Snip. And then that is your cat honeycomb all basted. So you go ahead and make 4 of those, and they don't have to be 4 identical ones. You could kind of mix and match, but then once all 4 are done, then they will start to look something like this. And then you'd obviously stitch them together into your block. The other thing that I wanted to say was, just because something is identifiable doesn't mean that it has to be, like we did the whole cat motif in this, but it doesn't have to be a whole motif to be identifiable. So with these fabrics, let me find it. So I've got like this cat here, but because I'm using a smaller template, you can see that there's absolutely no way I'd fit the whole cat onto it. Yet I would be able to fit its head on, which means that when basted, it would look something like this. And if you imagine 4 of them, so it'd be like that, you'd still be able to identify that it was a cat motif that you wanted to show in your block. It just wouldn't necessarily be a whole motif. And again, you know, with these sort of designs, I do have other fabric other than cat fabric. I know it looks like I don't, but I do. I could do this one sideways on, and I'd still get enough of the animal, the motif, that I'd be able to tell what it is in the finished block. And again on this one, but it wouldn't necessarily be a whole motif. So it's kind of I guess it's terminology, kind of the language you want to use, or just have fun playing. So you could do whole motifs where the whole original motif is identifiable, or you could do identifiable motifs where you can still identify what the original motif is, but it's not in its entirety. So have a play, see how you get on with it, and watch the next video for how to sew these honeycombs together.